Well, good morning, Northridge. And good morning, Jonathan Busch. And so we're doing this interview this morning, and the reason we're doing it is we are talking about an event that we're going to have on November 1st from 6 to 7:30 at night. And so how this came about, as we were calling members of the church or my phone was ringing, there's a lot going on out there, and people are really feeling it, and it's even amping up more now. And I would go to bed going, oh, Lord, how do we help our people? And how do we walk beside each other? And how do we get out in the community at a time like this when we're not even supposed to really be near each other? And so anyway, the next day I was over at Mitchell Christian, and a student came in, and I needed to make a referral, and I'd never met you. But your name came up, and all of a sudden I thought, oh, wow. And so anyway, in talking to Ben, we were talking about what if we could have a night where we could all just learn more about what is going on and how we're responding and that kind of thing. So anyway, he went and had lunch with you. And then he came back going, oh, yeah. And so then we sat down with you. And it was just an amazing time of sitting down. And honestly, Jonathan, I just feel like you were an answer to prayer for what we're trying to do. You know, our church has always looked at ourselves as connecting hearts to hope, and that is what came out of that conversation. You were really doing that. So you are an ordained pastor, and you also have a degree in counseling, and you work at Engage Counseling. That's your center. And then, and you are a Jesus follower.
Absolutely.
And that is so evident. So if you wouldn't mind if I just ask you some questions. So basically, if you guys want really the truth, this is kind of a teaser for November 1st is really what we're doing. So anyway, I'm just going to ask him some questions so that you can kind of see what we're going to be doing that night. And I'm going to be honest with you, I think that night is for everybody. Yeah. It is absolutely for everybody. And I know when we got done with that conversation, I think Ben and I both just felt like a big breath of fresh air. You know what I mean? We're all in this together. Yep. And you gave such language. So my first question is, what are you seeing right now in regards to COVID-19, the election, and things going on in our community and in our world?
Well, thank you first, Pastor Ben and Gina, for giving the opportunity. I think this year, 2020 is going to go down in the records as really a unique year. But I think the thing that I'm seeing, we're seeing a lot of traffic coming in, a lot of people calling for a lot of different things. But I think it really comes down to this. I think 2020 has been the year of disruption. We've seen disruption from early in the year all the way through, whether it was the virus early on and then the reactions in the economy and the agricultural markets and now just the play out with the quarantines as well as politics, and there's so much disruption this year. And the thing that I've seen with disruption, we all have disruptions. We have disruptions every year. It just seems like this year seems to be piled on. What I've found with disruptions is that disruptions don't tend to cause problems. Disruptions tend to reveal problems. And I think that's really important to understand that when we tend, even the people who just embrace change, I mean, you wake up and you're just ready to do anything new. And there's people who don't want any change whatsoever. But even the big change lovers, disruption after disruption after disruption gets unsettling because we tend to thrive in routine. And when routine is disrupted over and over again and life becomes unpredictable, we begin to react emotionally, we begin to react spiritually, we begin to react relationally. And that has become a problem. What we're seeing in the mental health field is that 6 months typically after a crisis, we see the manifestation of that through maybe diagnosis you've heard of as PTSD or anxiety or depression. We're really starting to see that come through now more than we have in previous years. And so there's a lot of things that are taking place. I also think that we're more open to talking about mental health now, even within the church. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a really important place. So I appreciate Pastor Ben being open to even have that discussion of mental health and how it relates to our spirituality and how the church can be a part of that.
Love that. What would you hope we can all get out of the night of November 1st? What would your hope be, Jonathan?
Well, I think, first of all, it's hope. I think, we serve an amazing God. that cares about us. He's not only able to help us through this, but he's also willing to. But God works in an amazing way. He works through his word, and he works through his spirit, he works through his body. So there's times where God's just going to come in and he's going to bring healing. And he's just going to unburden us, he's going to restore us, he's going to revive us. And then there's times where God's going to want us to walk through the process. And sometimes that's, in Scripture, Jesus told the guy to go wash in Jordan 7 times. And, well, he could have healed him on the spot. But there was a reason that God had him walk through that process. I think sometimes that process is us learning how to depend upon God. But I think that process also gives us an opportunity as a community or as a congregation to really join together and support one another. I think wholeness and life comes when we understand one another and we carry one another's burdens. And coming out of that night, I'm hoping that, first of all, you come out with hope. There isn't any problem too big. This isn't God's first rodeo. That God's got a way through this, but there's also some very specific things we've learned biblically, also through science, that is just really powerful, that I think that evening we can just open up a little bit and give you some understanding and give you some language to be able to help one another.
That's so good. What would you have to say to the caregivers out there? There are so many in so many different lines.
Yeah. This is being in the caregiving field. The compassion fatigue is starting to kick in. Whether you're in the medical field or whether you're in some level of helping, whether working in nursing homes or in counseling or in social services, anybody working in some kind of a compassionate field is starting to feel it in the church circle. And I think the thing we're going to peel open that night, we don't have a lot of time to open it up this morning, but we're going to peel open that night so many times it's not so much what we experience as it is what we believe about ourselves when we're experiencing it. And that's going to be a really big element we're going to open up that night. If you're a caregiver and you're able to come that night, or if you're able to watch it online or record it, it's one of the most important things I learned about myself in working with people, of how to stay on top and not get sucked down into some of the issues I'm dealing with, is how to just understand where some of that stress is truly coming from.
You mentioned the altar and discipleship. How does that relate to COVID and everything going on right now?
So that's a good point. It's kind of what got me into this. I pastored for about 20 years, and I believe in the altar. I believe in God's miraculous ability to supernaturally transform our lives. But there were situations we began to run into that we would pray and we would fast and we'd walk through with people, and we just could not see resolution. And the Lord called me back to our seminary. I went back and got a counseling degree in counseling psychology. And since the last 12 years, God has just begun to unpack this for me. The altar is so important, that we come to that place where we hear God speaking to us and we acknowledge we've got to change. There's lots of altars that alter our life. There's this thing up here where we respond to. Sometimes it's in the middle of the night at an altar where God speaks to us and says, you've got to change. Sometimes it's reading his word or just the Spirit of God. Other times it's stuff like the pandemic. Other times it's stuff like the politics of this year, where we just come to a place of crisis and we go, something's got to give. In that moment where we say, okay, God, where do we go from here? Here I am. I'm going to humble myself to you. Pastor Ben's going to speak on Jonah. Jonah had that altar moment. But something that has to go hand in hand with the altar is discipleship. Mm-hmm. And discipleship is just simply mentoring. It's teaching. It's walking with somebody. And discipleship takes place in your Sunday school classrooms. It takes place here in teaching here in the sanctuary. But it also takes place in coffee shops and tailgates at pickups. It takes place sitting next to people at ball games. It's just simply doing life with people and walking through with them. And those two pieces are so important. We're going to unpack this a little more that night, the difference between the two and how they work together and what happens if there's an emphasis on just one. I think it's a really important piece to understand how we can walk in freedom that God has for us and the hope that God has for us.
Mm-hmm. And I love, just having sat with you for a little bit and hearing a bit of what you're going to say, I love the way you unpack that, Jonathan, because it's for everybody. Yeah. It's for all of us, no matter if we've been through a lot, or we haven't faced that
Yep.
much in life.
That's right. Yep.
In your opinion, what has prevented this conversation from taking place as much in the church?
I think probably a couple things. One is fear. I mean, we're not sure, should we get involved? Should we say something? There's fear, or what should I say? Or I've been through so much, I don't know if I have the right to speak to that. Or I haven't been through anything, I don't know if I can say anything. Sometimes just that fear of whether you should get involved, and I think also just a lack of understanding. And I think our hope for that night, in visiting with the two of you, our hope is first of all, you come out of there with hope. Not going to be easy, not going to be quick, but God is faithful. God will find a way through this. There's hope. The second piece is to give you some understanding. I find that when I can give language to people regarding their emotions and how they interact with spirituality and how they interact with behavior and how they interact with relationships, language is so important. And then my hope is to be able to give you some confidence, even to do some mentoring in your family and in the church, being able to reach out to those around us, not to be afraid to say, hey, how are you doing? And when they say fine, say, well, how are you really doing? And have that conversation. Mm-hmm. So confidence would be a big piece, confidence and hope.
Mm-hmm. I think you were also giving permission to say, I'm not fine.
Yeah.
I'm not fine today.
Yeah.
And so I think this night is going to be for everybody. Now, to talk logistics. So here's the deal. It's on November 1st from 6 to 7:30. We all know that COVID is amping up around here, and all of that. We want to keep everybody safe. So here's what we're going to do. When you come in, behind the glass, that will be masks. In the sanctuary will not be. I don't know if we'll have that back room open. I think, yes, I'm getting the nod. We'll open that back room up. I don't know if you guys know that is open now. There's some families that are going back there with small children. But sometimes, the loneliness factor is kicking in big also. Sometimes it's just pulling up in the parking lot and seeing other people get out of their car, even if you're not going to be near them, and it's just a wave. So this is all going to be open. This is for people in our church. This is for people in the community. Even if you don't go to church or you don't have a church, this is open to everybody. Jonathan has agreed to let this be taped, so it's going to be run online on Facebook. It's also going to come off our website, and it will be taped. So this can get out to whoever needs it. And you want my honest truth, I think we all need it. I know after I sat down with you walking out of there, thinking, oh, okay, yeah, everything's, okay, yeah, some days are draining. But I kind of started realizing, when I got home, my fuse is shorter than what I want it to be. And it was just acknowledging what that was and giving, and you gave me permission to use that language around the table with my kids again and say, it's been a hard day. I've listened to a lot of hard stories. I've stepped in space with a lot of people who are really hurting, and it's bringing, that up. It's nothing that we can fix. So anyway, this is for everybody, and you are offering God's hope, and I think it's going to be amazing. So you're all invited. So once again, November 1st from 6 to 7:30, you're welcome here, or you're welcome to watch online. Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan.